I was going to get them all chocolate bars to get them to clap like that, but I guess I didn't have to. There's a point to all this, I hope. I didn't sleep much last night. I know there's some here in this church, you know who I am, but we're recording this DVD, and there's people who watch who don't know anything. So I not don't know anything; they just don't know. So I'm going to introduce who I am. I'm so good with words. Just who I am. I was raised on a little farm. Lots of hard work and cows to milk. I didn't know a whole lot about church. Ended up suicidal in my early 20s. And I met a preacher at a wedding, and I didn't go for the church scene. I thought they're just all polish and show, and it's not real anyway. But I met my match, not in the way you might think it. It's just I met this preacher, an older man, at this wedding, and I seen something in his eyes that deflated all my arguments. And he wasn't there saying, hey, he wasn't the type of guy that was trying to corral you into heaven. He didn't even say a whole lot, but his eyes were saying that he had found something, and he wanted others to follow. And I did. One night, after I talked to him, first time I talked to him, in my old pickup truck driving home crying, I said, God, I don't know what the guy has, but I really want it. I was very much of a loner. And I worked on farms and traveled around and did that. I'm not the type of guy that should be on a stage, really. Usually people, when I say grace, somebody has to fix what I did, because it didn't come out right. But I began to ask God what He wanted me to do. And it's not that God is some kind of a slave driver that you have to go and say, okay, God, I'm a Christian now. Put me in the workforce here. That's not how it started. I would go to this little church in my late 20s especially. I started really asking God. I remember I used to come home there and I had the door was unlocked. I had a key, that's right, to that church. That's where I'd picked up the guitar. God started to give me songs. And I would, on the way home from the farms, I'd go in there and I'd walk around. I tried to talk to God. I didn't claim to know how to do it exactly. And of course I had my barn clothes on and stuff. I left a little aroma around. I don't do things correctly. But I didn't think about that. But God started to give me songs, and to me they didn't sound like the nicest type of songs. I thought, well, God, you gave me a new life. When I sing when I pick up the guitar, I'd play basically love songs to God, some of the choruses and things, my new life, God's changed my world. But that's not the type of songs God gave me. They seem to be challenging the church. And it's hard to do stuff like that because it makes you come off looking like, well, I'm better than everybody else, so I can point fingers. But as you read the Bible, you realize that God did put things on people's hearts to speak some difficult things to the church, and it wasn't to beat them up. It was to say, you may have gone somewhere you're not supposed to be going. Come home. Go back to those quiet places. And this song here is just called The First Place. And I thought, 2 years ago, I was back in my old stomping grounds and driving around, and I was taking a longer look at things than I used to. I stopped at the little church where I met the preacher. I stopped at the farm where I had gotten saved. I remember coming home there to that place, and just all those memories. And I stopped at one place where I used to play guitar, and there was a bicycle path, and I'd sing on a big rock. Sing Amazing Grace and whatever. And God gave me a little song there. I think we ended up doing a CD that's kind of along those lines. I think it's my midlife crisis CD or something like that. Christians don't have midlife, do? I don't think so. We're not supposed to. I had one cousin, I remember, had a full-blown midlife. Got the motorcycle, grew the beard. Can't believe she did that. I've only got one joke. That was it. But think about your life. Think about those early times, especially if you're a Christian. And if you're not, this could become part of your life too.
I went back to the first place where I called upon your name. I feared it might be different, but those feelings were the same. All the years of living had not dampened what I knew. If anything, it's better knowing what you've brought me through. 'Cause you're God, and you never change. You're not fickle like this world that thinks so strange. And this is just a taste of what I'll see when I get home. But it's quite clear that while I'm here, I'm not alone. Sometimes it's good to visit all those memories from the past. The good ones and the bad, some make you cry, some make you laugh. It reminds you just how faithful He has been and what He's done. It helps you know that He'll be there for the years to come. 'Cause He's God, and He doesn't change. He's not fickle like this world that thinks so strange. This is just a taste of what I'll see when I get home. But it's quite clear that while I'm here, I'm not alone. It comforts me to know the life I've lived was not in vain, that I've tried to be like Abel, a whole lot more than Cain. Pleasing Him who gave me life brings joy none can express, and at the end this place called heaven, it's gonna have one new address. 'Cause that's what He said, and He doesn't change. He's not fickle like this world that thinks so strange. And this is just a taste of what I'll see when I get home. But it's quite clear that while I'm here, I'm not alone. That while I'm here, I'm not alone.
Oh, you're going to do the quiet thing, are you? Okay. Now don't. If you did that after 3 songs, I'd be a puddle on the floor. You have to sweep me up and get somebody else. It was actually in this church. It was kind of special. Some of these songs God gave me right here. And this one was right down here. 3 o'clock in the morning, about 2.5 years ago. And I guess in some ways I'd kind of, after about almost 10 years of traveling and singing, maybe part of it was just the workload or the stress from being in front of people. But I think mostly it was the songs. And sometimes I'd almost argue with God a little bit and say, you got to give me some different songs, because they're all the same. I'm like the broken record that just, here's the guy dressed in black. There's nothing good to say. Why do you give me these songs, God? And that night, I pretty well laid it down. I said, God, you got the wrong guy. I'm going to quit. I can't do this. I'm safer in a barn milking a cow. At least I know what I'm doing. But God gave me this song that night, and it was just called "It Won't Go Away." I was reading in Daniel this week. I'm not a scholar that can quote everything inside out in the Bible, but I read it a lot. And I was looking in there. It said, he was, when God would show him something, and I'm no Daniel, but we're small. There's many, not just like there's probably some here. God speaks to us things. And sometimes when we hear what God speaks, it's like Daniel said, he was grieved. And it said even his head, he said, was troubled. It troubled him. And the next chapter I was reading, it said, when he heard from God, at one point, God was saying something and he fainted. He said he was sick for a few days. Then he got up again. This DVD, I think, in my farm boy language, I guess, I think it's going to be called "Stay Out of the Ditches." Early on, when I'd sing in the beer tent, and that's where God sent me, I didn't start singing in the church except for, so they'd let me sing a song Sunday morning, and I'd stand there and grip the guitar so tight the pick would fly out of my hand and everything. But God would send me, and I'd sing at these street festivals and places. And a lot of the message that God was giving me then, in the beginning, was, I'd be saying, the world and all its bells and whistles, they won't satisfy. Run to God. He's the one you're looking for. And I think I'd walked through enough of that to know, and I think I could say that. I mean, I'd drive around in a $500 car when I was 35 years old. I didn't care. People can laugh if they want. But this song, it's just called It Won't Go Away.
They say I'm a Christian, I sing Amazing Grace, but that's not what I'm seeing on their face. They wink at sin and don't know how to blush, and wonder why the singer's making such a fuss. They sure love church, they say that's my God. I'm not sure their argument in heaven would be bought. Look what they do and what they watch and what they say, and they're convinced that their conduct is okay. They say Jesus gave them life and gave them power, and they agree we're living in the final hour. But it's mostly just an act they like to play. They've learned all the words and what they need to say. They love hard preaching, they want the truth, but their conscience is so numb it don't compute. They've heard it all so many times it won't convey. That's what I see, and these thoughts won't go away. It won't go away, it fills my mind. It's there every day, not from time to time. It's there when I pray, it's what I hear God say. If it's just me, why won't it go away? Noah preached 100 years or more. Still in the end they stood there crying at the door. And you think about the church we have today. When all is done, there'll be one awful price to pay. 'Cause sin is just a word they like to rhyme. They can't see their life is so far out of line. It's not an issue like it was back in the day. They found a comfort zone and that's where they're gonna stay. Jesus Christ himself could take the stage. You'd think that would be enough to make them change. There'd be a few that would take his words to heart, but most would sit there thinking they're too smart. I know my message doesn't come with cards and flowers. Sometimes I've questioned God for hours. Why won't you give me nicer things to say? If it's just my thoughts, then make them go away. It won't go away, it fills my mind. It's there every day, not from time to time. It's there when I pray, it's what I hear God say. If it's just me, why won't it go away?
This song is a dedication in a lot of ways to that older preacher man that I met. His name was Reverend Barry. And there's so many in the church today they're looking, they got to have their guy. He's my guy. I follow him. It's like they choose their man. They got to have their guy in their corner. You know, I don't go for that guy, no, but that's my guy. And maybe somewhat innocently, maybe they don't realize it, but it's so part of the North American culture that they stop getting alone and listening to God themselves. And see, there's danger in that. There's a couple of ditches that are pretty deep. And I'll talk about the first one for a bit and then the other one. But this is what I believe God's told me to say. There's a movement today that I had a call yesterday. God probably knew I needed to. Sounded like it was a guy from near Muncie, Indiana. And he sounded, it's hard to tell on the phone, but he sounded like a big old guy. You know, the accent. And, I'm from Canada, I don't have an accent. I guess, I don't know. I just don't know how to talk. But he told me a story, and he said he'd watched the last DVD that we'd made, and I guess that was I needed to hear that, because part of me inside says the world doesn't need another talking head making some other product to throw out to people, just a bunch of more information and yakking. Who needs that? It's like, God, I have to be I have to be doing something that's what God wants me to do. There has to be a purpose to this. And I believe it's to bring life to people. And this guy, he said, you got me crying, he said. Got me crying a few times. And then he told a story about a church where he was at, and they started to go into the whole new seeker-friendly, and I'm never sure if, like when you say names, sometimes it's dangerous ground. But I've been told by some pretty godly people that pray that I need to be specific, because otherwise people maybe don't see. You know, of course, there's the Rick Warrens and some of these Bill Hybels, and there's quite an assortment to make God, they fashion God into some new thing. And you need, if you're going to pick somebody to look to, find the one that's probably the quietest, possibly. Like this preacher that I met all those years ago. I remember seeing him preach, and he'd get up and he'd run out of words, and he didn't know how to express himself, and the tears running down his face, and he couldn't even quite finish the sermon. I remember sometimes, and his wife would come up and take his hand and take him down and sit him in the chair. He'd sit there and cry. And then she'd come up and just kind of finish it off a little bit. Anyway, this is a song about guys like him. To me, they're the heroes in the Bible. God chooses the foolish to confound the wise, the nobodies. not the know-it-alls.
He believed that good old-time religion was the tried and proven way. They'd not invented much that could deeply touch, like the sermons of his day. Some said he wasn't with it, and some said worse than that. If they'd read the old church history, they'd know what he said was fact. Now Mr. Barry was a wise old man. I remember how he'd speak. His words weren't complicated, but they'd stay with you for weeks. That man sure knew his Bible. I would cling to every verse. He often spoke so fondly of that small abandoned church. He said they made good soldiers there. They could march and fight real good. They would man their post in battle, take orders like they should. Most of them were heroes. They were loyal to the core. All they had was basic training, but they understood the war. It had been years since I saw him. I'd moved on and went my way. Many times I thought about the words he used to say. I watched progress start attending church. Every week brought some new fad. The more that things would change, the more I wanted what he had. I thought about those soldiers who used to march and fight real good. They would man their post in battle, take orders like they should. That's why he called them heroes. They were loyal to the core. All they had was basic training, but they understood the war. I went back for one more visit just before he died. A new church now stood up the street. The town was filled with pride. They had a new slant on religion. It sure brought in the crowd. When I brought up the subject, his gray head sadly bowed. But son, they make poor soldiers there. They don't march or fight real good. They won't man their post in battle, take orders like they should. You might call them defectors. That's the cause they're working for. They have all the latest training, but don't understand the war. Well, they boarded up that little church. It didn't fit the times. Many said it was offensive. It crossed too many lines. I went back there not so long ago to say goodbye to my old friend. From his grave I looked upon the church. I thought how true his words had been. They sure made good soldiers there. They could march and fight real good. They would man their post in battle, take orders like they should. Most of them were heroes, that's the kind of shoes they wore. All they had was basic training, but they understood the war.
Christmas Eve, last Christmas Eve. No, it was the day before Christmas Eve. We were driving to our daughter's. And I got a phone call. And I hear this gentleman on the phone. And we just finished a CD in which I had actually sang a song dedicated to a praying grandma, not blood relative, but a lady that came into our lives about 6 years ago now, I guess, or more, at a very difficult time in my life. I had a lot of people telling me that I was not doing this. I had no right to do what I was doing. And I was singing songs that were destroying the church. I shouldn't be in the church. And I thought maybe they were right. I didn't know. God showed me. And just a short few days after that, I got a call from this lady, and she became this special woman to us. And a lady in her wheelchair, and I visited her, I believe, 6 times in her little house. I knew God lived there. But this phone call was actually from her son. And we'd been at the funeral, and I think there's 7 children, and he's the only boy. It's probably rough. I remember there was one farmer I worked for. They had 6 girls and a boy, and he was the second youngest. And the sisters used to hold him under the water in the pool and stuff. It looked like they'd held him under there a few times. Poor guy. But this guy, this son, and I heard him, at the funeral, and how tenderly he'd talk about his mother, and how she prayed, and how he'd been away from the Lord, and how she'd prayed for him. But here he was saying, I want to encourage you. He'd just gotten my new CD in the mail with the song of his mother on it. He said, I want to encourage you. I thought, oh, that's good. But as he talked, I realized what he meant by encourage was not what I was expecting. He said, I want to encourage you that God is doing a lot of amazing things in the church today. And I know there's some truth to that. God's still God. But I could gather something in his voice. It was basically saying, I need to stop knocking things and just come on along. So I researched that night. I got on the computer and I went to this church that he was going to, and I got a sermon from the pastor, and I listened to it. Big church. And I could not believe how subtle they could be. And he was actually talking about, some of the prophets in the Old Testament. And I realized as he went along that he was taking it upon himself to explain them away. And they would continue to stress the point. I've heard this before, but I was quite shocked how they could sow that through a sermon. That any time you feel any, they don't call it any conviction, they call it condemnation. Anybody that's saying anything that might be in a negative way at all, it's never from God. And they say that, and here's this, to show how strong the deception is today. If you can take a praying grandma, take their son, it scares me a little. We've got to get along with God. The days are not like they were before. The Bible says there'll be, I'm no authority. It's pretty plain in the Bible that there'll be deception like we've never seen. And so it's not going to be obvious. That's a given. But this song is, it's just called They Won't Get In.
They say the door is open, they guarantee their plan. The path they have leads to the promised land. And everyone is welcome, they've broken every mold. They don't believe in anything that's old. They use a little bit of this, they use a little bit of that. They have many tricks inside their magic hat. If you follow what they teach you, you'll have all your dreams and more. What they've got goes straight to heaven's door. But they won't get in. They haven't dealt with sin. It's just a new fandangled web they like to spin. Yeah, they can try till kingdom comes or God knows when, but they won't get in. They say the church is changing, you must go with the flow. Forget about those things you used to know. Grandma's prayers were silly, she drew too many lines. Thank God we have advanced beyond those times. We know what Jesus meant now, he lived outside the box. I guess Grandma's head had way too many rocks. So come join what we're doing, let's reinvent the way. The message must be relevant today. But they won't get in. They haven't dealt with sin. It's just a new fandangled web they like to spin. Yeah, they can try till kingdom comes or God knows when, but they won't get in. Jesus never swayed much, what he talked about he meant. He said, I'll give you life, but first you must repent. But we have a great aversion, it hits too close to home. We want the song in a different key with a different tone. We're trying harder now than ever to get the combination changed. I guess that means we're in the final age. When it finally reaches sundown, I wonder how it will unfold when the lukewarm church is left out in the cold. 'Cause they won't get in, they never dealt with sin. There were some gaping holes in the web they used to spin. Yeah, they can try till kingdom comes or God knows when, but they won't get in. Yeah, they can try till kingdom comes or God knows when, but they won't get in.
Can't help but think of the verses in the Bible that say, many will come in that day and say, Lord, Lord. And they say, we did all these things in your name. We built churches, we did this, we even healed the sick and raised the dead. And he turns to them and he says, I never knew you. But he also says, away from me, workers of iniquity. It's still here today. This song here is it's called It Meant What It Said. You know, God took me, I thought it was a mistake at the time, but I remember asking God, you know, I want to do something for you. And I thought, well, I needed to go to Bible school or something, or be a preacher, I don't know, God. But I couldn't quite come up with any kind of funds to even start that process. And God, I'd picked up the guitar just at the same time, and God started to give me songs, and I guess he had this other thing in mind. But he also took me and asked me to do this job called relief milking, so I ended up working on all these farms for years and years. And I mean, I guess it amounted to about 17 years altogether, a long time. I was 38 years old when they let me out of the barn, pretty much. But I think God did that for a definite reason. It's kind of like my Moses experience, I guess. He took me into the desert. I worked 7 days a week. I was late for church pretty well every Sunday morning because you couldn't only milk the cows so early in the morning, and you couldn't get there. I had run around the barn so fast I'd meet myself going the other way. I'd tried. You get up at 4:30 and you try to get all these chores done and then drive back to get to church. So, that was Sunday morning. But see, the other meetings were night meetings. They were basically out of the question because they all started at 7 o'clock, and I didn't get home till 9, half the time. Couldn't go to any conferences on weekends. Sometimes you'd see the church, the bus fill up and off they'd go. But I never got to go. All I had, and I wasn't much of a reader. I remember even in school, I don't know how you do book reports and stuff. Boy, that was a deal for me. 3 books you had to read in a year or something. Oh my goodness. Try to find the smallest book, like 100 pages. And something that you might know already, maybe, possibly you heard about it, let's read about the Titanic. Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, and then maybe you could not even read it all, get through. So I'm not a book reader, and might have been a good thing. Just the time, just to read my Bible was enough for me. And even sometimes then, I'd read a few verses, and I could chew on that for couple days sometimes. And sometimes I keep going back to the same verses and keep reading them. Some folks would say, well, that's not how you do it. You're supposed to read so many chapters a day, you got to get it all down. But I was more like the cows that just kept chewing and chewing. But I was really, not every day in the barn. Sometimes you have bad days at work. But I was all alone, and there was a lot of times I was there, it was quiet, and I was just saying, God, who are you? And show me what you're all about. So I didn't have access to everything that was happening. And all those years went by, and it's like when I came out, and God said, okay, I want you to go and sing now. Just sing and travel across the country. Oh, sure. And we set out, scared to death. But I started to look into, I'd be in all kinds of different churches, and I would look out at faces. And I would hear things that they were teaching, and new books that they were handing out, and they were studying this, and it seemed like such a foreign thing from anything God had ever talked to me about. When I was alone, it seemed strange. And at first I thought, maybe I'm just behind the times, I guess. I got to catch up. They've got more education than I do. They've heard other things from God that I don't know about. But the more I examined it and the more I would look at the lives of these people, I realized I think it was the other way around. They would have been better with just a Bible. In the world, I've used this illustration a little bit, but if a guy was trapped on a desert island for 35 years, provided he was still alive at the end and the coconuts held out and stuff, But they picked him up and they brought him back to North America. He'd look around. Can you imagine the technology? He'd look, whoa, people talking on people walking across streets doing this. What are they doing? And all of this, the world had passed him by. Take him a while to figure it all out and catch up. But that same guy, if he was a Christian and he came back, after 35 years, he might very well look around today and say, where are the Christians? And people say, they're here and they're here. Look, there's large groups. And he might look around at some of the signs and say, I see a big religious machine over there that says Christian on it. Another one over there. Another one. But I don't recognize it. Looks odd to me. You sure they're Christians? He would probably come to the conclusion like I am, and I think many people are, hopefully. Many. But the Bible meant what it said.
For years I read my Bible line by line. That might explain why somehow I got left behind. They're moving onward and upward, so they say. Well, that's just fine, but why am I the one to pay? I was minding my own business, so I thought, just leading life the way the good Lord taught. But then they labeled me a misfit, I'd done wrong, just because I wouldn't follow some new song. I know the times have changed, I've seen the news. And it's brought about some strange conflicting views. How they turned the good guys into bad guys, I don't know. And why does everything that's pure now have to go? They've even got the Bible on the block. They're questioning the whole thing, lock and stock. Those in the church who've stood strong and kept their head now know for sure that it meant just what it said. It meant what it said when it talked about the last days and what would happen to believers who would humbly wear his name. It meant what it said when it spoke of hell and heaven. No, I haven't lost my head, but I now know the Bible meant just what it said. It's all happening so fast, I dare not blink. They even want control of what I think. It's not an option, we're required to join their team. Some days it's like I'm living in a dream. I thought all this stuff was somewhere down the road. I'll need all his power to bear this heavy load. What will become of those who weren't the least prepared? I must conclude that they'll all soon be running scared. It meant what it said when it talked about the last days and what would happen to believers who would humbly wear his name. It meant what it said when it spoke of hell and heaven. No, I haven't lost my head, but I now know the Bible meant just what it said. I'm not in step with the times, don't read all their nursery rhymes. No, I haven't lost my head, but I now know the Bible meant just what it said.
I only have about 2 fast songs. I better do one. I do all lullabies and everybody goes to sleep. I'm old guy. I like lullabies. But this song here is just called I Don't Understand. And it might sound a little as in your face as I can get, I guess. But it didn't, when I wrote this song, it didn't come out of just one by one, I'd see things that would really affect me. And I remember there's this country singer, Christian, I don't know, has one Christian song. And all it sings about is how Jesus made him a star. So I don't know. But he does great things. He's won many awards, top vocal in Canada. Vocalist and huge supporter of Samaritan's Purse, collects all the toys. You know, I was seeing a Christian TV one day. I was in a motel and I turned on. And he's talking to the Christian host and TV host and says, you know, when people come into my concerts, and he says, and he names this song that he opens with, which is certainly nothing about God. He said, I take that first strum on the guitar, and he says, and people's hands go in the air. He says, because music was made for worship. I wanted to rewind that. Can you say that again? Because that made absolutely no sense at all. But the Christian host is, wow. They're just enthralled because it's some star that stooped down to say a nice little word about Jesus. There was a few things through the years, and you'd see different friends, people that you knew 20 years before that were such solid Christians. And part of me is saying, I don't want to, maybe I just think I'm better than they are. But some of it was just so in your face. The things that they put up on their Facebook and things, they say what they're doing, and it's just, there's no shame, and people are, it just would never, years ago you wouldn't even dream of it. Now it's commonplace. And I we have a little church down the road from where I live. It's out in the prairies, about 5 miles away. And the door's unlocked all the time, so I go there quite a bit. It's, I figure, and then I got wheat fields that I walk beside. I can talk to God. I can say 3 words and wait 5 minutes before they say the next word. I don't have to act like I'm anybody. I just want to talk to God. But I was in there one day after having a new story had come to my attention of someone that we knew really close in their whole life. And I was kneeling down. I wasn't trying to be holy. I was banging my head on the floor. Then you start crying and say, God, I just don't understand. I don't understand. That's all I could say.
Well, I seen him on the TV in my beat-up motel room. The singing star / Christian, he's got both heaven and the moon. His fans scream when he sings his cheating songs, and the Christian TV host sees nothing wrong. In the store you'll find her DVD right by the Bible rack. She makes the church folks laugh and cry, but her life sure ain't on track. But no one cares what kind of sin she's done, 'cause after all our goal is having fun. I don't understand how they can speak about your name, use all the words that sound so good, like it's just a harmless game. I don't understand. Did they not read the words in red? Yes, Jesus spoke of love, but there were other things he said. That's the kind of stuff I can't get through my head. Our church friends from the past just had a wedding day. Their daughter was the bride, but that's not all they gave away. The pictures were complete with drink and dance. A few years back, that wouldn't be their stance. He talked about the change that once took place and how his heart did melt in a church where his grandpa preached, at an altar where he knelt. Now he hugs Oprah like the lukewarm Christians do. His eyes look different, it must have lowered his IQ. I don't understand how they can speak about your name, use all the words that sound so good, like it's just a harmless game. I don't understand. Did they not read the words in red? Yes, Jesus spoke of love, but there were other things he said. That's the kind of stuff I can't get through my head. His new car wears a fish, and there's a Bible in his hand. He's only seen a few choice pages, and he never makes a stand. He reads Harry Potter to his kids before they sleep. His commitment to the Lord's about that deep. Their videos play everywhere, their name's a household word, but it's not quite clear if it's God they love or just the harmonies they've heard. They have retreats with New Age speakers, can I ask why? The big church scene never bats an eye. Story after story, and increasing by the day. Is this what the Bible talked about? The great falling away. So-called saints now calling evil good. We're walking through the days we never thought we would. I don't understand how they can speak about your name, use all the words that sound so good, like it's just a harmless game. I don't understand. Did they not read the words in red? Yes, Jesus spoke of love, but there were other things he said. That's the kind of stuff I just can't get through my head.
So there's kind of a couple of things going on because of that. First of all, how does someone who's not a believer, how do they look at all this? I think they laugh mostly and say, well, this church stuff is really not a whole lot different than anything. Yeah, they live pretty much the same as I do. They leave off a few things. Exactly why do I need this? That's how I used to think. And I had a good reason, I think. Till I met that preacher, and of course I've met other folks. And for you that are listening, I don't like cliches, but I don't even know if I've ever even said this, but I've heard preachers say it, that to a lot of people we're the only Bible they ever read. We need to have a brokenness about us, a humbleness and a realness. And in just a simplicity way, the more you desire God, the less you really care about other stuff. All the bells and whistles and things that impress everybody. In fact, you get a distaste for it. It's not. But this is what we've created, and this is what the church is doing. And I'll finish off this side of the ditch here, and then I've only got a little bit more to sing, but it's called a Made to Order God.
They say God's here, come in and worship. We promise you a Jesus you will like, new and improved, and much more with it. This one's in color, not that boring black and white. We are so glad you came to visit. You won't leave here disappointed, that's for sure. Design your own God, we have no limits. We feel Jesus. Design your own.
That's good, eh? Forgot the words.
Please don't leave until you're happy and have found the God that fits into your plans. We don't do old, we don't do sappy. We like a Jesus you can make with your own hands. We've got some songs, and there's a movie that will entertain you till your order's done. We'll keep it light, and here's a soothie. We want you pampered, our God's a God of fun. There is no sermon, there'll be no preaching that would interfere with what we have in mind. We'll motivate you with some new teaching that will relax you and help you to unwind. Guess you could say we do church different. We don't advocate that prehistoric stuff. There are no rules, that's much too reverent. We prefer to let things flow right off the cuff. Hope our design has been fulfilling. Our motto is we always aim to please. The main idea that we're instilling is that our customers should live a life of ease. I've just been told your God is ready. They have your Jesus in the foyer by the door. Please try him out for 1 week steady. If he's not all you want, return him to our store. We've got some models, they'll be here shortly. More user-friendly than what's out on the floor. In the days that we are living, we know our clients are always needing more. Well, here's our card, you've got our number. And all the fine print doesn't mean that we're a fraud. There's not a chance we could go under, not with a product like the made-to-order God.
I'm going to ask my wife, Jennifer, to come here for a second and stand. How a doofus like me ever ended up with such a wonderful wife, I have no idea. This song here is, it's a love song. But I was home this summer and God gave me 7 songs in 7 days. I can usually figure he's up to something when he does that, because I don't know how to write a song. The last song he gave me, when I finished it, I thought, oh, it's a love song, because I've got half a dozen love songs about my wife. I told her the other day, I said I'd marry you in a heartbeat. But we already married twice. We had our vows redone at 20 years. And the third wedding might be pushing it. Okay. But I realized when I got this song done, it wasn't just a love song. It's called She Wears My Name. It's got a parallel meaning when you think about the church. You know, the Bible has a theme. You stay here, I won't forget the words. A theme about the bride and the groom. Why do you suppose God would do that? He knows how we're wired. Is there anything more special than a wedding? Anything? Well, Christmas. No. But a wedding is still top. But this side of the ditch, actually I'll just sing the song first. She wears my name. You know, you wear the name of a Christian. So kind of think as you listen to it, it's about us, but it's also about the church. You can sit closer depending who you're sitting beside during this.
I recall that fall evening, the first time our eyes met, that nervous greeting. I was as shy as you could get, like a boy before a princess. I felt things I can't explain, and I never dreamed that one day soon she'd wear my name. Days turned to weeks, which turned to months. Something inside began to bloom. I didn't eat so much, and I was walking on the moon. Then came the question on that night. All I'd rehearsed came out so plain. She steadied my hand and said she'd gladly wear my name. Now she wears my name. Ever since we walked through that church door down memory lane, how could we know what was in store? Now so many years have passed, but I still stare at that wedding frame, just to think that lovely lady wears my name. Some say it's just my age, but I love to reminisce about the days. Our first date and our first kiss under the bridge. That water is gone, but I know there's more from where it came. It still thrills me just to know she wears my name. When I see couples old and gray, they've got that twinkle in their eye. I can read his mind. He's saying, my, the years did fly, head over heels just like before. That's how it always will remain. He just loves that angel by his side that wears his name. She wears his name. Ever since they walked through that church door down memory lane, How could they know what was in store? Now so many years have passed, but he still stares at that wedding frame, just to think that lovely lady wears his name. Yes, I know our time will come. That wheel of life keeps rolling on, and if I go first, I know in a while she'll come along. On my stone there'll be some writing. He had no riches or no fame. He only held one treasure on this earth, and she wore his name.
2 more songs. And I can stop. I can go breathe. The one side, if you ever see, in a grocery store, you see a tabloid magazine, which we all have, and some young actress, really young, marries, some 85-year-old guy. And you look at it and you don't want to, but something just says it's wrong. Something wrong about it. She's just using him to get his money And see, that's what that ditch that is pulling so many people in the church. Just using God for what you can get out of him. Like some kind of a sugar daddy. And it's very appealing. But there's another ditch, and I'm only going to sing one song about it. I've wrestled with this so much. God, am I allowed to say things? I don't want to find myself fighting against God. But there are people today that are recognizing this other ditch and all this fluffy whatever, and some are coming out and they're saying, and they're running hard and fast in the other direction. I got to get away from this. There's another ditch on the other side. And those people, they're climbing up on the road and they're saying, come here. We've got what you're looking for. They don't want you to stay on the road necessarily. They don't say that to you, but just stay alone with God in those quiet places. No, they must come over here. We must teach you. We have the humblest way to God. And when it talks about the deception being strong, and that they'll be gathering teachers to tell them what they want to hear, they're not just all the obvious ones. This ditch is not, and it was created even a few hundred years ago. But if you go back to Jesus' time, the Pharisees of that day would certainly fit into what this is all about. At least that's what I see. And I think I've been in enough settings. I've had these people even come up on the stage afterwards, and I didn't know what they were doing. I thought they'd come to shake my hand, and they challenged me. And because they sort of recognized that the Spirit of God was present maybe when I was singing, hopefully, but it doesn't fit into what they believe. And so they must interrogate you. And I said, now tell me, when you heard the gospel, that preacher years ago, now was the gospel clearly presented to you? You mean you're questioning if I know God here? And I remember as we started to travel, I'd be in these settings, and they would stare at you. Just concerts were just the most unnerving things. It's like they didn't know what I was saying. But yet they had Bible studies just constantly. They were always studying and dedicated. But keep in mind, the Pharisees were very dedicated people. They studied, and they liked praying on the corner so everybody could see them, and they even fasted and did lots of things. But they're the only ones that Jesus had some very hard things to say to. And why did he say that to them? There must have been he said, beware of them. So if he said beware of them, there must have been some danger that they could pull people away from the simplicity of just being alone with God. There's scriptures that say they long to be teachers, but they have no understanding of what they teach. And this side of the ditch is almost like those, if you see a wedding, you know, when you hear about things in other countries where these arranged or forced marriages, something about that, same as the tabloid thing, it's on the other side, but something about it, so that bride has no choice in the matter. She doesn't love him, but he's going to make her love him. This God has this, see the bride and the groom, in the Bible it's, of course, the groom is the Lord and the church is the bride. So this bride, you're going to adore me. He's on a trip. But that's not what the bride and groom is about. It goes both ways. There's a longing for each other. That's why God painted that picture for us. So when some of these men stand up, and even the man that I'm singing about in this song, when they make statements that say all of us would go to hell, no one would choose God. And even if the Lord himself was to go to the door of hell and open it up and say, does anyone want me now? We would slam the door in his face. Not one on the face of the earth would choose God. But their theology and their teaching, which I found it strange that I didn't know anything about it all those years reading my Bible in a barn. It says that God sorted it all out before the world ever began. He picked a few to be his church, his bride, the ones that go to heaven. And he damns all the rest to hell because that's just what he does. And so if you weren't picked in the lottery before you were ever even born, you missed it. Can anybody wrap their head around that? But see, what happens is many of these preachers, they're coming down hard and strong and forceful against all of this fluffy stuff on the other side, and they're saying all these good things. It's like 3/4 of everything they say is true. And yet they have this foundation. They actually believe what I just talked about. Does that not taint everything else that they say? It'll mess with your head. When they say your heart is deceitful and wicked, even after you're saved, you can't trust your heart. So even your own longing for God, you can't trust. You know what that does to your head if you go to a little church all by yourself and you don't even know if you can trust your own feelings? Where is that in my Bible? And this song is, they're kind of like, at a wedding, when they say, are there any objections? They would be standing up at the back saying, we object. That bride at the front claims that she had a longing for him. She claims that there's an ounce of something in her that longs for her husband. That makes her wicked and evil. So, this song is for those that may not see this. And I trust I'm saying what God wants me to say. Get along with God. Stop choosing your man.
So you've been picked by God before all time began. He doesn't care about the soul of every man. You'll get this message out to everyone you can, with bits and pieces of the Bible in your hand. The arrogance that I hear in your voice proclaims that heaven is nobody's choice, that God controls the human race like little toys. But there's no logic in your words, it's only noise. You may think the average Joe ain't got the smarts, that we won't question all your ludicrous remarks. But you're forgetting that God speaks to tender hearts, and that's kind of where salvation really starts. And then you tell me nothing happened on that night, when I cried to God and I received my sight. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but you don't have the right to be shading everything that's black and white. Now, Mr. Washer, and all those like yourself, should be locked away on some forgotten shelf. There are souls outside the gate and it's almost 12, and that stuff you're trying to peddle sure don't help. That smug look of yours sure gives you guys away. It makes it hard to take in anything you say. That smooth tongue of yours might say you know the way, but to me you're only actors in a play. You speak a little truth and draw your listeners in. That's how your crafty made-up stories all begin. But this power-tripping game you'll never win, 'cause some can add and we don't buy the web you spin. How can you tell us nothing happened on that night, when we cried to God and we received our sight? Well, I'm sorry, sir, but you don't have the right. You've pushed it far enough, and now you've got to fight. You've bullied your way into homes and lives, and your fur and teeth are cleverly disguised. Well, here's one verse I think you should try on for size. God hides the truth from those who think they're wise. Jesus said to come to him just like a child. And I know you find that concept pretty wild. It pulls the plug on your theology and style. And heaven knows that we're allowed to have a smile. No, I don't do this kind of singing just for spite. It's 'cause you've taken heaven's door and slammed it tight. And millions like me who bowed their hearts one night would like to tell you, sir, that you don't have the right.
The last song I'm going to sing is I said my wife this morning said there's a purpose to all this, is there? Yesterday I was in the church here and it's like, God, what? Part of me just, maybe it's the devil. I don't want to blame everything on him all the time, but it seems like it's been that way since I started. It's, there's a story in the Bible, and it's not just about me. This song, it can be about, obviously, people that are listening. You feel you're like David, the shepherd boy. And I was kind of, identified a little bit, I guess, because I took care of the cows. Only he was a shepherd, and I was a coward, but I took care of cows. Okay. But when he came down and Goliath was there, and basically the big religious guys, they tell David to go back where you know what you're doing, feed your sheep and stuff. You're just a little boy anyway. You're not smart enough. You haven't read the Bible slowly or carefully enough, otherwise you'd understand what we're talking about. And so many times that's what I do. I just go back. But every time I go back to those quiet places, God speaks to me again and sends me back again. There has to be a cause here. It's about big religious machines oppressing people, lying to the people, corralling them like cattle to try to keep them so that they can't find Jesus is a friend, very good friend. And I see that in the eyes of people when I meet them on the road. And you say that one knows. So if I can encourage you, if you're having a hard time fitting in today, in the whole church scene, if you're listening and not even a Christian, and you're just looking at it all. Don't throw God away because of what's happening in the church. He's as real as he's ever been. I hope with everything I can that I haven't said anything that I shouldn't.
In my deepest times of loneliness, surrounded by my fears, when I can't shake the pain from the taunting and the jeers, the thought will linger through my mind, have I fought my final bout? They've extinguished what you gave me, Lord, the flame is going out. Then I retreat to that quiet place, and I hear his voice again. He whispers my name softly and reassures me he's my friend. He puts life back in these tired bones and wipes away my doubt, and returns me to the battle with the spark that won't go out. I've read about those Bible folks and the injustice they withstood. Some were even murdered for doing nothing more than good. A resolve was put within them because they knew a guy with clout, and they discovered how to fan the flame of the spark that won't go out. They would retreat to that quiet place and hear his voice again. He'd whisper their names softly and reassure them he's their friend. He'd put life back in their tired bones and wipe away their doubt, and return them to the battle with the spark that won't go out. There are seasons on this journey that all believers must endure, when our camp will be encircled by those whose motives are not pure. We must leave that 4-lane battlefield and take the old abandoned route, and find the spot we used to go and fan the spark that won't go out. We must retreat to that quiet place and hear his voice again. Let him whisper our names softly and reassure us he's our friend. He'll put life back in these tired bones and wipe away our doubt, and return us to the battle with the spark that won't go out. The more this old world changes, the more things stay the same. You'd think they'd come up with new curse words, but they're still using his name. No matter how they fume and fuss at all the victories they tout, through all their winds of hatred, we have the spark that won't go out. Though the battle winds may blow, he's still the spark that won't go out. How could we know what was in store? Now so many years have passed, but I still stare at that wedding frame, just to think that lovely lady wears my name.